What's up, YouTube? It's the Action Figure Grader coming back to you with another market update for vintage Kenner Star Wars figures that sold on eBay. Today we're going to take a look at more loose graded gems that sold, lots of baggies that were graded, a lot of those I covered in a what to buy video, and then at the end of the video we'll have some last 17 figures. As always, if you have a collection to sell, whether it's loose graded like the items we're covering today, or just loose, mint on card, vehicles, whatever you have, if they're vintage Kenner stuff and you're looking to sell the collection, you can reach out to me at actionfiguregrader@gmail.com and I can put you in touch with trusted buyers. Everyone has been very happy that's worked with the folks that I have sent, and everything's been a very smooth transaction. So just reach out to me if you have a collection to sell. All right, let's take a look. We've got a double telescoping saber Luke Farm Boy. I sent this to my Patreon supporters, and I said, quite honestly, this is a pretty good price for what it is. It's an AFA 75. It included their certificate of authenticity from CIB, Collectible Investment Brokerage, which is affiliated with AFA. And it's just one of those variants that people want to have in their collection. It's kind of the hybrid second generation case where it still had the divider between the Saber and the Luke. And again, it was an AFA 75, and it was listed for $995, which I actually thought was a pretty good deal relative to what they sell for in higher grade. Usually an AFA 80 will set you back $1,200 to $1,300. Maybe you get lucky and you get it for less in an auction. An AFA 85 can be anywhere from $1,800 on up. I've seen them go for as high as $3,800 last year, but I think the prices have come back down to earth just a little bit. But I would say usually at least over $2,000 for an AFA 85. But this AFA 75 did sell. I assume one of you Patreon supporters got it because I did send it out and it sold very quickly thereafter. $995 for an AFA 75. Here was a Hong Kong Boba Fett, just a standard Hong Kong Boba Fett. Nothing exciting about it, but it's an awfully nice high grade. Brand new case style. That one sold in an auction from Vaults of Yavin, a trusted seller I've bought from in the past. $279 on 34 bids. That seems to be about the going rate, anywhere from $250 on the low end to about $285 or so. For a Taiwan, we've just documented a couple that sold. AFA 85s can range $275 to $350, depending on how nice it is and the grade and things like that. But usually an AFA 85 is about $300 or more for a Taiwan COO Boba Fett. This is just the standard Hong Kong. Next up, we've got an AFA 85 Stormtrooper that sold in an auction for $264. Keep in mind, though, in my opinion, this one had probably degraded slightly inside the case. It did not have the archival case, and as you can see, the torso color is still bright white, but as we've talked about with some of these white figures, the arms have started to degrade just slightly. It's got a kind of a brownish pinkish tint, and it didn't quite match the torso. So it's going to go for a little bit less, probably degraded slightly since grading, but it was an AFA 85. It sold for $264. Now, contrast that with last year when these prices were a lot higher. There was an AFA 85 that was still bright white. I'm talking perfect. The torso and the arms and legs were all still bright white. And that one sold for over $600 in an AFA 85. So this one sold for less. Obviously, it probably degraded slightly, but still a very nice figure. I'm not trying to downplay how nice the figure is. It's still a very nice figure, and that's a price I would have paid all day long for that particular variant. Okay, I think I've got a few baggies that are coming up a little bit later on, but I wanted to point this one out. This was an AFA 85 baggie for R5D4, and it's a baggie variation that you don't see very often. This is the ESB-A baggie with the Kenner in the blue box with Made in Hong Kong below it. And this particular baggie for R5D4 is tough to find, let me tell you. This is the first time I've actually seen one for sale, graded or ungraded, and I wanted to buy it so bad. I really did. But I was like, you know what? Let's send it out to the Patreon supporters. I'm going to give them a day or so, and if nobody buys it, then I'll put it on my PayPal credit, and I'll figure out how to pay for it down the line. So I gave them a little while, and unfortunately it did sell. It sold within like an hour of me sending it to my Patreon supporters because it's not a baggy variation that you find very often. I really wanted to get it, but I didn't get it. $450 took it home. I don't know if that's a fair price. It was a price I was going to be willing to pay, but one of y'all did pick it up, so congrats on that. I really wanted it, but I'm glad it went to a good home. It's just one of those baggies that I've never seen it before. I mean, I'm sure that it's popped up on eBay, and I just missed it in my searches. But I particularly, in particular, I like RFID4. I've got a lot of different loose graded variants in a baggie. I've only got one baggie, but that's one I really would have liked to have had. But congrats, whoever got it. I've got some UKG graded gems before we dig back into the baggies. This was a Hollow Cheeks Tusken Raider graded UKG 80% brand new case style. That one I also sent to my Patreon supporters. It sold very quickly thereafter for 295 pounds, which is $373 US. At least in the US, a ungraded example sells for about the same price. I've seen a number of them that have sold for between $325 and $375. So to get one already graded for $375, I thought that was a pretty good deal. Next up was another UKG graded Wampa, loose graded Wampa. That one was a UKG 80%, which is about as high as you really get. I mean, the Wampas, the arms and the torso and head discolor, but the legs don't. It's weird how some plastics, it all depends on what item it is, right? Whereas the Stormtrooper and the Leia's, the legs and the arms turn a different color, but the torso doesn't. For the Wampa, it's the opposite. The legs stay the same, but the torso and the arms do not. So that one did sell for 155 pounds, which is $196 US. That's a price I'd pay in a heartbeat. That's a really good deal. I got some no-COO figures. I feel like no-COOs, you never see them hardly ever graded by AFA or CAS. They're almost always UKG graded because they're European variants. They appeared on Palatoy cards or on Tri-Logos. And this was a no-COO AT-AT driver that I sent to my Patreon supporters. They grabbed it, 120 pounds, which is $152 US, and that's about what they sell for. Even in auctions, I see them sell for about that price, but that's a really nice example. Another no-COO is the TIE Fighter palette, a very tricky one to get. That's on my want list for this year, and I almost grabbed it, but again, I sent it to my Patreon supporters first. They picked it up for 120 pounds, which is $152 US plus shipping. The shipping was really reasonable even here to the US. It was only another $22 shipping coming from the UK, which I can't send anything from the US to the UK for that. I just can't do it. It's crazy. I sent an item to a buddy of mine and it was like $65. It was crazy. So to get it from the UK to here for $22, that was a good deal. So I almost bought it, but I didn't buy it. And congrats again, whoever picked that one up. The last no-COO before we dig into some baggies is a UKG 80% Princess Leia Hoth. Very tricky one to get. I already had this one in my collection, so I sent this one out. It did sell for 150 pounds, which is $189 US and change. Again, in a higher grade, it's probably more like $250 to $275 US. So I thought that price was fair enough that I went ahead and sent it out to the Patreon supporters, and somebody did grab that. All right, here are those baggies that I sent in a what to buy video a couple of weeks ago. They were all at auction. They were all very high grade. The first is Wicket. It was an AFA 85 Wicket baggie. That one sold for $172.19. I thought that was a really good deal. Next up was Tebow. This one did not sell, believe it or not. This one was an AFA 85 baggie for Tebow for $150, and it did not sell. And quite honestly, if I had seen that, I was just distracted Sunday night watching football, so I didn't see it ending. So the two really good games were going on Sunday afternoon and in the evening, and I was completely focused on them. I completely ignored my wife and kids. My wife was getting really mad at me, and I said, I don't care. I don't care, Elizabeth. Find something else to do because I'm watching football. And so I missed this baggie. I wish I'd seen it. I probably would have bid on it if I had known that nobody had bid on it, but no one bid on it. I don't know if it'll get relisted. We'll see. Next up was an FX7 baggie, ESB-C baggie, I believe. Yeah, ESB-C baggie. Very common baggie variation, but still, it's a pretty hard to find character. But that particular baggie type is very easy to find, is what I should say. AFA 85, $182.50 on that one. Next up was Weequay on an ROTJ baggie. That one sold for $178.50. All really good prices. If you think about what it costs to ship it to AFA, to get it graded, and then to get it shipped back, $178.50 is a pretty good deal in my mind for a very high-grade baggie. This particular baggie style for Han Solo trench coat is not easy to find, and I could not believe that this one sold for $217.50. That was a bargain of a deal. ESBC baggie. There's another one that's like a clear baggie with black writing on it that I think it says just made in Hong Kong. That's it. This particular baggie, which is an ESBC baggie as well for Han Solo trench coat, this one is the harder one of the baggies to find for Han trench coat. $217.50, good price. They usually sell for about $200 ungraded, so I thought that was a really good deal. Next up was a Leia Poncho ESBC baggie, AFA 85. That one sold for $207.50. I mean, if you think about what a Leia Poncho sells for loose ungraded, even on Facebook, they sell for $125 to $150 regularly. Loose ungraded, complete. This baggie was already graded by AFA 85, and it sold for not much more than that. So I thought that was a really good deal. Next up was a Leia Hoth baggie, same baggie style ESBC. This is a fairly common one, but usually a lot more expensive. That one sold for $224.50. Luke Jedi in an ROTJH baggie, another common baggie style for Luke Jedis. That one was an AFA 90, and it sold for $370. That was a bargain of a deal for a very high grade. It's hard to get a 90 in anything from AFA, much less a baggie. You think about everything that has to go perfectly to get a 90 grade for a baggie. The lettering has to be absolutely perfect. The figure itself has to have no scratches on it. I mean, it's just really tough to do. And to get a 90 grade Luke Jedi baggie for $370, that's a price I would have paid all day long. The Dengar baggie, ESBD baggie, this is one that's on my want list. I don't have a baggie for Dengar. Would like to get one. Just timing was not right, and I was obviously distracted, as I already told you. $237.50. I'm going to be paying for that one, folks. I'm on my wife's poop list right now. I'm going to have to be doing a lot of dishes and a lot of laundry. A lot of trash will have to be taken out to the trash can. So I'm definitely not in her good graces right now. So I'll have to make it up to her with some flowers or something. But anyway, that AFA 85 ESBD baggie for Dengar, $237.50. I'm kicking myself for not bidding on some of these, but it is what it is. Next up is the baggie for Bosk, and I mentioned how hard it is to find this baggie. I already had one in my collection, graded AFA 85 plus, so I was kind of curious to see what this would sell for, because this is one that does not pop up regularly. AFA 85, it sold for $456, and I thought that was a little expensive, but yeah, who am I to say, because they just never show up. I think I paid $350 or $375 for my AFA 85 plus, admittedly away from eBay. I bought mine on Rogue 5 Toys on Facebook, but $456 for that one. Pretty awesome item. And now we're going to dig into some last 17 figures that sold. 3 different high-grade UKG Baratas sold. The first was a UKG 85% Barata. That one sold from AL Vintage Toys. It was listed for 160 pounds. It sold for 145 pounds, which is 185 US dollars. An absolute bargain. Really good deal there. Next up was a UKG 90% that sold. This seller, PAU Nay 123. I mean, he has an endless supply of last 17 figures in all high grade from UKG. They're all at auction. Every single week he is listing stuff, so you need to go check out this seller. I don't know him or anything, but I mean, it is a constant stream of UKG 85s and 90s for last 17 figures. It's unbelievable. It's like he's producing them out of thin air. Where does he get them all? So I heard from one of y'all that he had a big collection and that he's slowly grading them with UKG and then selling them off. I don't know if that's a fact or not, but they're all gold label. I mean, it's unbelievable. UKG 90%. This one sold for 185 pounds, which is 234 US dollars. And then the same seller had another UKG 90. This one was at auction and sold for 205. So buy it now for 185 in a UKG 90. A auction for a UKG 90 even went even higher than that. So pretty crazy to see that. Another UKG 90, this was a Ramba. That one sold in an auction for 180 pounds, which is 228 US dollars. And he had a UKG 90% Imperial Dignitary. That is tough to do. Nose rub. Usually the Imperial Dignitary has got his face full of white powder, like in Scarface with Al Pacino. It leaves a little rub on his nose. This one was a beautiful UKG 90% 212 pounds, 268 US dollars. I mean, it is tough to get one in that high a grade. Next up was another 90%. This one was Lando General. This one sold for 285 pounds, which is 361 US dollars. All very fair prices given that they're 90 grades. I mean, those are prices I'd pay all day long. Same seller also had a UKG 90 Warwick. I mean, just unbelievable. It's a constant stream of these things. 245 pounds was the final winning bid on that one, which is 310 US dollars. And then finally, he had a UKG 90% A-Wing pilot. That's as good as it gets. I would argue that it's probably a little bit overgraded because it had some scratches on the hand there. That's really more like a UKG 85% at best, in my opinion. It also did have some rubs on the silver chest apparatus. So I question whether that's a 90% personally. The rest of them, they all look like 90s, but this one did not to me. That one did sell for 250 pounds, which is 317 US dollars. But go check out his other items because every single week he's got more and more and more. I don't know when the flood will end, but he's making a lot of money. I can tell you that. Anyway, that's all I really had for this look at vintage loose graded gems from the Kenner Star Wars line. Thanks as always for watching, and I'll be back soon.